Hello there, Sir from 17 once again. This is my Dishonored 2 very hard ghost walkthrough. This is Mission 3, The Good Doctor, and this has probably my favourite music in the game. It really reminds me of Amnesia and Machine for Pigs for some reason. It's kind of this almost dreary, dreamlike, just lingering, somberful track. It's a really nice piece as I'm struggling with Blink right now. It has to be said, guys, right? I think this game works well 90% of the time, but there is a 10% time where I get very mad with it, and it's always to do with Blink. Blink is a mechanic that's really cool, but I don't think they've fully made it work as good as it needed to work. Why is it that when I'm using it, it messes up more than I would like it to? And I would love to blame myself here, but there are times where, if you don't know, guys, right, Blink tells you whether or not you're going to land on something, whether or not you're going to climb something, or whether or not you're just going to go out there into the abyss. And it's done so by visual tells. The first one is a circle below the orb of Blink, which tells you will land on some kind of geometry. The arrows scaling upwards will tell you will climb something, and then the orb on its own will tell you when you're just going to fly. In the first game, I only recommended ever using Blink on arrows because it was a guaranteed grab of something. But you could still use the one with the circle below it, it just had a hit and miss nature. And this game has not fixed that. This game is just as hit and miss with it. So there are instances in this walkthrough where I'm aiming at something, it tells me I'll land on top of it, and then I don't. By the way, did you see the AI? What the fuck was that guy doing? He's walking into a door. There's a lot of rough edges in this game, and the AI is one of them, so you need to be very careful, because on very hard, they notice you really quickly, and they're kind of attentive. So when they're walking into a wall, when they're supposed to be doing a set path, how will the AI compensate to get out of that walking into a wall situation? You don't know, and you can't predict it, because the game is weird like that, so you've got to be very careful, folks. It's really annoying. But back to Blink as we introduce the blood flies. The concept of the blood flies: stop and use Blink. You can creep past them slowly, but the moment that they get reared up and start buzzing aggressively, you want to stop moving. I just use Blink to completely circumnavigate them, because they will attack you. You can kill them, but of course, I'm not killing things in this run. But Blink fails occasionally, and it doesn't make sense, and it leads to some really strange moments.
Something under my...
I don't get it. Like, there are times when you jump and the reticle comes up on something and you let go and you still fall, even though it tells you should have gone above it. And then there are other times when it does it perfectly. And I just wish there was more coherence to it, because it's such a cool mechanic. But once you come into this room and you talk to Vasco, it's going to trigger the transformation of the Doctor. And now we're going to have to do the strategy in order to save her, because this is of course a pacifist run, which means we have to go and get some research notes, and then we have to mix a vaccine and then come back and cure her. Which sounds complicated, doesn't it? But this level has a beautiful measure of flow. Just the way that each area links to the next and can be navigated. Beautiful game design. But there is some ugly teeth sitting behind such a beautiful mask, and I need to tell you what it is. So this is a game where you save a lot, and if you're not saving a lot, in my opinion, you're not playing it correctly, or you're challenging yourself to do one perfect run, which is completely different, and touché for you, because that's tough to do. Saving in this game can have weird effects, and I need to explain this to you so you can avoid the pitfalls that I fell into. These effects can be used, but they can also hinder you. And the rule of thumb is never ever save on something that is transitory in the world. And what I mean by this is, when you open a door, because a door can be opened and closed, it has a certain coordinate within the world when it loads in. And this game does a weird thing when it loads you in, and you'll notice it because I've kept a few instances of it in the guide. I think the player gets loaded before the geometry and the enemies fully load in. Because there are these weird moments where you are in a place where no one can see you, but when you load in after a checkpoint, the enemies get alerted. Like, they can see you, and then boom, they're told that they shouldn't be able to because everything else finishes loading. So there are these super weird moments where when you load in, the AI kind of sees you, and that affects how they move. So they'll do crazy stuff that they didn't do before because they saw you, because the game propagates its workflow in such a specific way that the player is kind of just stuck there, and then everything else populates around him. And it's difficult. It can put you into some really bad situations, and it gets worse. So I mentioned a door, didn't I? And the transitory nature of the door. There are times when you save on top of doors, or anything that's high in the sky that can feasibly move, where when you load back in, you're not on top of it. You're somewhere else you've never been. And this leads to hilarious moments where you get fucked. And it's not your fault, because the game puts you where you were never. And I don't get why it does that. I don't think it did it in the first game, but if it did, I never noticed. And it's the same if you do any kind of blink-related save. So if you hold blink and you put your destination on something and then you pause and save, when you reload, it's going to blink you there. And it doesn't necessarily blink you where you put the reticle. So it leads to these wonderful moments of, where am I? What am I doing? I've gone through the walls, I've gone through the floor, I've gone over fences, like, I've gone to places where the game's not meant to put you. And the only thing I can say with this is be very careful with your saves, because if you get fucked and you have to restart the level, you can't. So you have to have a backup save, and if you don't, you're screwed. So you need to be very careful with the saves, guys, because the world just doesn't work right sometimes, and it leads to really weird stuff. But it can also lead to good results, and good results that you can replicate. I'm going to use a strategy on the 5th level where I go to blink onto something that I don't think you're able to stand on, and I save, and when I reload, it puts me completely the opposite side of the fence I tried to blink on a building I shouldn't be on, and I completely skip a courtyard, which is awesome, but it's not intentional. It's just a weird repercussion of how the game loads events and what the game does. Like, right now, this is something I need to talk about. You know, when you're messing with these tools, when you're doing these scripted events right here, the game world doesn't freeze. The game world is continually moving, so there's a chance that a guard can walk into this room and see you when you're doing this, which is bizarre. How many games do you know that don't freeze the world while you interact with certain objects? This is one of them. If you leave a door open in this game, the AI gets suspicious, which is a wonderful concept. But if you leave a door open and then you go into a cutscene, like, you know when I was injecting the needle in the body a moment ago? A guy saw me through the window. I reloaded, did the same thing. He didn't see me, because he moved in a different path. And that's what I'm getting at, guys. There is a jank in this game that I do not remember in the first game, or I never came across in the original Dishonored, and it leads to moments where you just kind of go, what the hell is going on? And there's a refreshingness to this because it's kind of funny, and it kind of spices things up, but there's a frustration factor, because as a guide maker like myself, I want to make strategies that work every single time, with no variables. You watch this video, you follow these steps, and you win. That's how this should work. So the last thing in the world that I want to happen is any deviations. And this game is planet deviation. So there will be moments where it's just, you've got to improvise, and it gets really, really tricky. There's a level coming up later on where we're using a timepiece to manipulate time, and I had a nightmarish time getting out of one room just because there were dogs, and the dogs moved into an awkward position, and I couldn't get them to move anywhere else. And just because of that one, capricious notion that they decided, we'll go left today instead of right, it put me into a 40-minute nightmare because I couldn't get past them. And I'm hoping that you folks don't have any of these issues, but there's a likelihood that you will bump into it yourself. And all I can say is good luck, because there are moments where the game just does weird things, and it can be very difficult to do anything. Speaking of weird things, I waited for the doctor to come beneath me, and then I did the drop attack. It was the non-lethal drop attack, and the game gave me a combat notification tutorial on the left. It only ever brings up that tutorial notification when you go into combat, which means it wasn't a silent takedown. So instead of dropping on her and having a cool looking takedown, I had to just do this. So be very cognizant of the fact that if you see that notice come up on the screen saying this is how you fight, it means you're fighting, even if you don't realise it. So you need to reload, because if you don't, you're going to mess up your ghost achievement. Additionally, depending on where she is when you inject her, her animation will play out the same, and you can put her up against a wall and she'll start like dancing through the walls and stuff, because I did that on my first playthrough, which is quite funny. And now all we have to do is make our way out of the asylum. But this is a fantastic level. I really, really like this one. And the beginning of this game started really, really well. I think the introductory level was not my favourite because, once again, no blink, but it makes sense in the context of the story. Second level is just a beautiful reunion of systems and mechanics and Dishonored doing what it does best. Verticality, creativity, and fun stealth. And then this one has a little bit of the whole supernatural, you know, the tense mystery as we're unraveling what's going on here. It has some of the darker storytelling, and it has just a combination of really well thought out, multi-layered, incorporating levels of stealth and interaction, which I think is great. And then the next level is a beautiful concept that's really ambitious, but it's complicated, and in its complexity, I had a nightmare my first time there, finding the paths that you're going to be watching. And it is, of course, the Clockwork Mansion, which... There are 2 levels in this game, guys, that I think stand head and shoulders above the rest when it comes to difficulty. Clockwork Mansion is one of them, and then the second one is a crack in the slab. Those 2 levels kicked my ass. One of them took me 4 hours, I think, 3 hours or something to beat it. The other one might have taken 2.5 or 2 hours, and the average level was maybe about 40 minutes to an hour. So you can see it's a little bit more intensive, but... My path here is, on top of this, wait for the dialogue to finish, blink over here, then move forward. Do not be afraid as well to stand up. When you're at a certain distance from enemies, you can stand up with immunity. If you're too close to them, of course, they'll hear you, but you shouldn't be really being too close to people while standing, because, unfortunately, Corvo wears clogs, and clogs are incredibly loud on every surface. And then we've got this. So the guy to my left is going to turn away, and I'm going to run, or I'm going to move forward, and I'm going to blink on top of this structure, this moving tower. Never, ever save on top of these towers, because you will never be where you put yourself when you load back in. And did you see that? That was me trying to grab the power cell and chuck it, but for some reason I stuck it back in the machine, and things got weird. Additionally, when you throw this, it blows up, but nobody cares. So I throw it, I wait a second, and then I'm going to jump and blink into the water. And you can hear the screaming? I don't know what the screaming meant. I have no idea. So I'm going to go into my menu right now, and I'm going to double check that I didn't fail by making sure that it all says never detected, all that good stuff on the stealth statistic, and then I'm going to continue and get back in the boat. But I edited that out because I was confused. So we get a random scream at the end, and I have no idea why. But thank you for watching. I hope the videos are helping. You take care now.